Hi, everyone.
And John, welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Chris. Yeah, thank you for asking me. And that's true. You know, I was told when I first was sponsored in this program that you always say yes to service work. So I do have a sponsor. He knows who I am. I know who he is. I sponsor, and they know that I'm their sponsor, and I know that they're my sponsees. And I like the prospects because I remember reading that in Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers when I first got into the program. It was one of the requirements. If I was to be sponsored by this guy, that I had to read Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers before I could go through the work. So a little bit about my story. My sobriety date is 7/10/21. You know, I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I mean, the reality of it was I didn't want to be an alcoholic. You know, I enjoyed drinking alcohol. I just didn't want to be an alcoholic. And, you know, I was a little kid, family of there was 8 of us, so I had 6 kids in the family, and grew up in the Midwest, and we're Irish Christian, Catholic. And so God was a big part of my life back when I was a kid growing up. And alcohol was too, you know, Midwest drinking and you know, I drank like I thought everybody drank. And I don't want to bore you with all of those stories, but you know, as I got older, my life started continually getting worse. DWIs, loss of a wife. Wife left me, and lost a business and a house that I had built. You know, so I thought I had this great life going on, and I remember after building this house, I was 34 years old, and I thought I had arrived because I had a business, I had employees, I had a wife, and I had everything that I could possibly want, like materialistically. I had it all. Or at least I thought I had it all. And I remember I was all done with the house. I got the final inspection from this inspector, and I'm out on the back porch drinking a beer, and I was so lonely at that point. It's like, why am I so lonely? Why? What is wrong with me that I feel this way inside me? And I didn't really think about it at that point, but I think about it today. And I thought about it as I've had this journey going through sobriety, is why was I so lonely? And all that stuff that I had, it wasn't making me happy. But I continued to drink because I had this big ego. And like, I like to drink. And I didn't want to become an alcoholic. And so as life went on, I lost the house, I lost the wife, and I lost the business. So that gave me another excuse to drink. So I continued to drink for another 12 years until I got to the point where my family would not talk to me anymore. And I was lonely. I was living in a double wide trailer with 2 other addicts. And, you know, I was the alcoholic of the addicts. And one day my brother came up to me, for some reason, I don't know why, but my brother answered the phone late night, probably midnight. I was in a blackout, I'm sure. And he said, "Are you done?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm done." And I don't really remember much after that, but I woke up in my nephew's bedroom in the basement of my brother's house. And he talked me into going to Milam that day. And I said, "Well, I'm unemployed. I have no insurance. I don't know how the hell I'm going to go to Milam." He says, "We got that covered for you." And it come to find out that when I got to Milam, my mom, my stepdad, my sister were there waiting for me. And my brother's like, "It's going to be like summer camp for you." Because it was July, right? So okay, I'll go. And I went, and my father-in-law, or my stepfather, swiped his credit card so I could go to Milam. And I went, man, that's just crazy. And I think about that today, and how emotional I get thinking about how willing they were to help me out at that point where I couldn't help myself. So I did the 20-day summer camp, and learned a lot about myself. But what I really learned was, you know, you talk about going through the steps, and I didn't want to admit I was an alcoholic, right? So I'm like, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just here. I'm just going to do the 28 days and learn to drink normally. But what really broke me down was this young counselor, and she was not even 30 years old, I bet. And she broke me down that second day in the Milam. and just explained to me, or made me realize that everything that I do, how my life has gotten so progressively worse, is because of alcohol. So it kind of broke me down that day, and at that point I became willing. And willingness, I think, is what got me sober and keeps me sober, because I'm willing to do what it takes to stay sober. If that's working with other people, if that's going to meetings, if that's going into Milam, I go into Milam on Monday nights and bring the message into Milam as part of my service position. And that's what really got me. So I put my tail between my legs and I got a sponsor when I was at Milam on a Thursday night. It happened to be a guy that goes to Fourth Dimension Group, and that's my home group. It still is today. And what really got me was, like I said, the willingness. And I sat down and I started reading Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers before I could go through the work with my sponsor. And it just changed my life. And I didn't really understand what was going on at the time, because when you get into the program, you're like, whatever they say, I'm going to do it. You know, I came to believe the power greater than myself, restore me to sanity. Okay, I'll believe it. You know, I'm going to turn my will and my life over to a power greater than myself. Sure, I'll do it. Whatever it takes, I didn't care. But what I didn't know was what I didn't know, because I didn't know that I didn't have a relationship with a higher power. I was doing it all on my own. And that's what really started getting a light in my head. After I'd gone through the work, I started sponsoring other guys. It was like, wait a minute here. I can have my own conception of God? Really? It doesn't have to be that God that I was raised with when I was as a child. So that's what really clicked for me, you know, after I was probably about the 8th or 9th step. And you know, going through that 4th step for me was like, I'm a great guy. I mean, everybody likes me. Right? So this is going to be a breeze. You're not going to lose me on the 4th, because he's like, we lose guys on the 4th and the 9th. You're going to lose me. I got this. And it was a big eye opener for me. You know, all the wreckage that I had created in my past, and it showed how selfish I really was as a person. So that was cool that I got to do that. I look back on it, that was a big step for me. It also showed me that what I didn't realize was I was kind of a man whore. You know, I did not treat women good, and I thought I did. And I thought I was a really nice, good Catholic boy, and I wasn't. I was a terrible person. And I learned how to actually date women in the program. Like, I know, like, I can ask a woman out if you'd like to go on a date. I know how to break up with a woman when I'm done. Like, I don't think we're a match. I can do that. I've done that in the program now. And it's amazing how I thought I knew all that stuff as I was growing up, but this way of living has taught me a whole different way to treat people and to show up. And that's what I've been able to do as a result of this program. And the coolest part about it is that I had this resentment against my ex-wife about how a terrible person she was, because she left me, even though she wanted me to get sober and wanted me to get treatment. I said no. I chose alcohol instead. I thought she was the worst woman ever. I thought she left me because I lost the business and the economy went terrible, and I had no money left, and that's why she left me. That's what I held on to for 12 years. And come to find out, when in Milan they have these letters that are written to the patients from their family members. Effects letters, they're called. And your family members will write you an effects letter, and you read the effects letter before you leave. And I got like 10 of them from my family members, and I got one that was handwritten from my ex-wife, 12 pages, front and back, hand-delivered, handwritten. And it opened my eyes to a few things about how I was as a person back then. And as a result of going through the work, when I got to that 9th step, I had sat down and made an amends to her. And it was an incredible feeling. And I'm still friends with her today. But I wouldn't have ever been able to do any of that stuff and build that relationship back with her if I wouldn't have gone through the program, if I wouldn't have been willing to do what it took and willing to say yes, no matter what. even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, because I'm really uncomfortable right now. But it was such a cool experience. And if you haven't done your 9th step, I would encourage you to take a deep look at it and find those people that make you feel uncomfortable and do that 9th step to them. I mean, I still have more amends that I need to make, and they still come up. You know, as I'm going through life, I still like, oh yeah, there's that guy. Another neat thing that happened to me is working as a superintendent for a construction company, and we go on bid walks a lot. And there was this company that I worked for when I was drinking, and they laid me off because they had no work. Great guys. They gave me a big bonus one year. I mean, just a bunch of good guys. And I was a total ass to them. And I hadn't seen him in a few years, and he was at the bid walk. So I went up to him after the bid walk. I said, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm like, well, I owe you an amends. He goes, you don't owe me anything. And I said, yeah, I owe you an amends. So I gave him my amends. The next day I got an email, hey, you want to sit down and have lunch together? So those things that you don't think about when you're going through the work, they'll come up if you're working a program. They'll come up, and you'll know when you have to make that amends to those people, and it works great. It's incredible how it worked. But I don't want to lose my train of thought because I think I'm going off the rails a little bit. But what really I think keeps me grounded in the program is willing to do service work, and that's a big important part of my program. Is showing up every Wednesday at home group, and showing up to we had phones today as part of our service work that we do, but and then spreading the message to the new guy. The new guy is the most important guy in the room. When I was first getting sober, my sponsor would tell me, go sit next to the smelliest guy in the room. And I'm like, I don't know that I have anything to tell this guy. And he's like, well, you got 45 days. You got 44 more days than that guy probably has. So that's really important too. From what I was doing, I would go to the Fremont Hall a lot. I don't know if any of you guys ever go to Fremont, but I live really close to Fremont, and I would go there because there was always a meeting there. You know, it was COVID was getting kind of over with, and they were opening up meetings, and there wasn't a lot of meetings to go to, but there was always a meeting at 8:00 on a Friday night at Fremont. So I would just go to that meeting all the time because it was close to where I was living, and I got to meet a lot of different people there. So it was actually really fun for me, and I got to meet some newcomers there as well. So that is me. I'm going to leave it at that. I hope I spoke long enough, but
Perfect.
And thank you for letting me share tonight.
Tonight. So, Louise.
Hello, I'm Louise, alcoholic.
Hello, Louise.
Thanks for asking me to share tonight my story. My sobriety date is 1/13/04. I have a sponsor. I sponsor people. I do service. I'll just start at the beginning. I am from a big Catholic family of alcoholics. My great-grandfather was an alcoholic. My grandfather was an alcoholic. My uncles are all alcoholics. My aunts, alcoholics. Cousins, alcoholics, drug addicts. Brothers and sisters, alcoholics, drug addicts. And I mean, I was born in 1970. I'm the youngest of 9. All my older brothers and sisters were, for the most part, alcoholics and drug addicts. And they basically raised me. So our family reunions were in Linwood, on a little farm, and they were basically like keggers. And we would ride motorcycles, horses, and drink. And of course, being the youngest, I just wanted to like keep up, and I was always trying to be older than I was. And so I started drinking um, pretty much when I started walking. Um, just sips or whatever, and they thought it was cute. Um, and that's just really the life. Even though I don't think my parents really condoned it, they weren't really paying attention either. Um, and so, yeah, that's just all I ever knew. Um, I went to all Catholic school though, so like, um, I don't. It's hard because it's like I don't really have anything to complain about, but like I don't really know the difference either. Um, so I remember the first time I remember the first time I really drank on my own with friends. Um, I was in like grade school, and we got a 6-pack, and I drank 4 of them. So, um, I don't know. I mean, I think I just it just felt right, and more always felt even better. And so obviously, I just made that my priority in life. By high school, I was like using drugs too. Drugs is a huge part of my story. Um, although um, I think I'm hereditarily an alcoholic. Um, but growing up in in the '70s, like obviously, um, yeah, I smoked a lot of pot too. Um, I barely got to high school um, from drinking and getting in trouble and smoking pot and like, um, and by the time I got to high school, um, I was drinking every opportunity, and started to become really obvious to my parents that it was a huge problem. Um, and they started trying to get me to go to treatment and try to see what was wrong with me. And um, I ended up staying in Spokane with my sister. She sent me and my older brother, we're like Irish twins. He's an alcoholic too. And we used to drink together constantly. So we just went there and drank. And we drank in the park, and we smoked pot. And I mean, I don't know that I ever had any other kind of a option. I I didn't know anyone I looked up to that did anything other than that. Um, so it kind of went from bad to worse, and I came back to Seattle and kind of got in with like the U District crowd. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. Um, we were just like hoodlums, and I was probably 15 years old. I didn't go home anymore. I stayed in the U District and basically just party. And I didn't go to school. I didn't have a job. I didn't care. It was just like day after day of just like partying. And once a week or so, I would probably go back to my parents' house and like take a nap and wash my clothes and try to get my life together. And obviously, my parents were totally beside themselves, and they would try to drag me to treatment, and I would go to treatment, and I would get out, and I just like, by the time I was 17, it was actually pretty bad. I was into like harder drugs and like lots of crime and a bunch of little hoodlums, and um, I started going to jail too. So going to jail, getting thrown in treatment, getting drugged to treatment, breaking out, getting kicked out of treatment, back in, out. My first meeting was at Fremont Hall in like 1986, probably. I was 16 years old. And I went in there and I was like, oh my God, you know, I am way better than all of you guys. I also thought I was really smart and really cute, and just like, this is like, no way am I like you people. And so then it just like obviously escalates. Um, you know, like the crimes and stuff were getting a little more serious, and I was getting caught and going to jail more, and I was approaching like 18. I was getting close to 18, and I ended up with a case, and I went to Echo Glen for a year. And right when I got there, I was also a big time smart mouth. And they were like, well, what do you want to do while you're here? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I just want to do my time. They were like, okay, we got you. And they put me in the worst part. And I was like, oh God, why did I say that? And I ended up in treatment there. And they used to have meetings that they would bring into that facility. And it was the first moment that I could have imagined myself not drinking and using, like, because I was in there. Things weren't really working out very well. I started to have some consequences, even though I was only 18. And it was like these really cool people. And one of them was like a biker, and they brought this meeting in. And I was like, maybe they're not all like weirdos and squares. And it just sort of like clicked for me. And I don't know that it fully clicked, or being that young, I don't know how people actually hold it together from young like that. Because I got out of Echo Glen, went right back out, started drinking and using, and but shortly thereafter, I got arrested immediately. Shortly thereafter, I was like, okay, I'm an adult. I'm gonna start going to prison, so I need to like get it together. So I started doing meetings, and it was the other fellowship, and I didn't get a sponsor, and I didn't believe in God, and I didn't do what was suggested of me, and I went to meetings every day, and I went to coffee after, and I did whatever I wanted to do, and I actually stayed sober for 3 years, just basically on fellowship and fear of prison. Anyway, I went back out, obviously, and that kind of is where it sort of starts. Like, they talk about what happens to alcoholics. Some come and then they stay, and they're good forever after. And then some, they come and they go out once or twice and they come back, and then they're good forever after. And then there's some, they come and go, and their life just gets a little bit better. And that is my story. And basically, the fellowship here kept me alive long enough to become willing, because I was in it. It was basically in and out. And I was progressively worse. The crimes were progressively worse. The consequences were progressively worse. Um, the things that I was doing progressively worse. And my health, like I almost died a bunch of times. And I got a 4-year prison sentence that I did. And I got out and I went back out again. And so to me, I don't believe in a bottom at all. I don't actually, desperation is relative. And to me, it's more about this grace, this moment in time where I was lonely enough, desperate, hopeless, completely defeated. And I can't even tell you that it was really that bad that day. And I didn't want to get sober. I had got sober for a minute and went right back out and was like frustrated with trying and just wanted to give up and didn't want to, like, it was too much trouble to try because I'd have to, when I'd get back out, I'd have to reestablish myself. And like, for me, my disease was super expensive, really hard, super desperate, and like terrible. And if you got into a flow of it, it was like tolerable, kind of. And like I was like, I just got to get in the flow of it. You know what I mean? I just have to surrender myself to it. You know, get my little drug dealing thing strong, and like so I can just die like this. And that's where I was at. And I was in a house, and it was a bunch of people, a bunch of drug addicts, and someone came and was like, come on, let's, I talked to your sister, and she's going to let us stay there, and everything's going to be fine. And like, you really got to try this. And I was like, dude, fucking no, I don't want it. You know what I mean? I'm tired of trying. It's not going to work. And finally, I just was like, okay, whatever. And I got in the car. And that was 11304. 11304. And like almost 21 years ago. And I got in the car, and I don't know, like still didn't believe in God. I still wasn't willing. I still didn't want to work any steps. I still would maybe go to meetings. I still thought I was like I had answers, and my answer was just like give up, but I had answers. And so I got in the car, and like just grace happened, like a series of circumstances that put me in a good place. Like I was out in Gig Harbor with my sister. It was sort of okay. I was sort of okay. And she was going to meetings. She had like maybe 3 years sober, my sister. And she just let me stay there. And she let me bring my 2 friends, which I can't even believe it. And so I just started going to meetings. And I heard in that one of those meetings, probably like 10 or 15 days in, someone said, I just do what people suggest that I do. And it was like a light bulb in my head that I had never done what people suggested that I do. And I was like, well, I mean, I guess I'm hopeless, so I might as well try that, because I know they keep saying it, and I might as well try it. And so I started doing what was suggested. Even some of like the past things that were suggested. I was like, okay, what do people suggest, right? They're like, suggest you get a sponsor, suggest you go to 90 and 90. They suggest you, you know, all the things. So I got a sponsor, and I picked someone that I used to use with. I picked someone that I knew they were really, really different. Um, they were actually sponsored by Darlene. I don't know if any of you know who that is, but she used to let people get clean on her couch. And anyways, it's from the same lineage that I'm sponsored now. But anyways, she said, okay, you come over every week, and we're gonna read. And I was like, I think I had about 6 months by then, and I was like, I guess that's what's suggested. So okay, I'll do that. And I would go over there and we would read, and really, really quickly, I was like, oh man, what have I got myself into? There's all this God stuff. And it doesn't take long before I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, because like I said, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school, had to go to Catholic church. I hated that. And I, all the way to the point where I see people on the street with God signs, I will approach them. Hostility towards God, not just disbelief, but a hatred towards religion. And when we got there, I was just like, oh no. And then it just like, I was like, okay, well, it's like whatever was suggested. And it, you know, the blessing was that she was also raised Catholic. She had also had some of the same things. And she's like, don't worry about it. She's like, just don't worry about it. Let's just keep going. You know, I know how you feel. I felt the same way, you know, and she's a Buddhist and she meditates. And so I was like, okay, you know, I don't have, you know, like church is not involved, right? And she's like, no, it's not. I was like, okay, good, okay. And then, so I just struggled. Like we went through, and I just like, I could barely stand it. And anyway, we get to one of the parts, and either God is everything or God is nothing, and either is or isn't. Um, and I was just like, fuck, I'd rather be loaded. Like, I don't want this. Like, God is not for me. And she's like, don't worry about that. She's like, just don't sweat it. She said, the only thing I want you to do is I want you to stop arguing with religious people on the street. That will be this step for you. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And I had like a long time where I didn't do that, but I have done that since. But like I try not to. And so we got to 4, and I obviously couldn't do it because I didn't have any kind of like power greater than myself. Like, and I like sat on 4 for a long time. It took me forever. It was like one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I was dating someone that I met in prison that I had been using with, and was a terrible person, a terrible influence in my life. And anyways, my life was very precarious. But I did get it done, and we did sit down and we read, and I did start to think. I did have more of an open mind, and what I realized was that I had been superstitious my whole life about the police, and I had always believed in something, and that it didn't have to be anything It didn't have to have any dogma to it. And I saw that that bit had grown a little bit. And that's how I kind of got my fourth step done. And then we read, and then I had like a huge awakening about how selfish I had been and how just all the lies that I had told myself and how terrible the ways in which I was treating people with, all that criminal behavior and all that, like, all that stuff. And like, I didn't think that was me. I thought that was like, everyone had that coming, like that I deserved all these like other people's stuff. And I don't know, everything sort of changed in a second after I read my fifth step. And the person I was with at the time relapsed not long after. And I grabbed like a bag of clothes, the dog, some dog food, and like backed out of the room. And like they went on to do whatever without me. And I had about a year sober. I had just got done with my fourth step. And I can tell you that from that moment on, like everything changed. I believed more and more every day in like the spirit of the universe. I believed more and more all the time that that was really personal to me. And like I could say, I'm going to jump ahead of it and say that today there's probably nothing more influential in my life than my connection to spirit. I still don't believe in any dogma. I do not read religious material ever. But I meditate every day and I pray all the time. And I'm like open for the universe to like flow through me. And I want to be of service. Like my life really revolves around how can I show up in a way that's like evolved and like really different. And but I'll just go back and obviously I continued slowly through the steps because when you're that I don't know, lost and hostile, the steps come really slowly. You have to have power to move through this. And if you don't have power, there's no moving through it. There's no amends when you don't have any outside power. I paid back the money because I'm egotistical and I'm like, that was something I could do to like show how much I was changed, so the money was easy. But some of the amends were like really, really challenging for me. And my relationship with my mom was really challenging to me. And I mean, 10, 11, and 12 were, I mean, like, I'm special ed in this. But at 21 years, I feel like I've just got step, 11 pretty good, kind of going in the right direction. And like, I just personally don't really believe in, like there's really ever an end to this. Like, I think that it's like a constant evolution. I mean, I've had years where I was, being in these rooms was really challenging, because I was like living my life, But I've always found my way back here. Because like I'm like spiritually sick, and I think that all of those struggles to find God for me, um, they're a constant, they're a lifelong challenge, and I'm, saying agnostically inclined is an understatement. And, um, I don't know why, but I think that once I'm really in it with like prayer and meditation, like I feel that connection. And I mean, I think recently I've had to like take a look at sort of some of the repercussions of my life, and sort of, get a little bit of outside help to kind of take a look at why. I mean, I think the best way to say it is like, after all of that, you have a hard time not hating yourself, for the things that you've done, for the time that you've wasted, and the way that you've treated your loved ones, and the way you've treated yourself. And so, like, getting down to, how that all impacts me today in my life has really been sort of the challenge of the last couple of years. And I mean, I think that, without this program young, I would have never been alive. Like, I'd have never even made it to 25, let alone, I'm in my 50s now, which is a miracle. And I just think it's a testament to these ideas of like, keep coming back. You know what I mean? No matter what happens, keep coming back. And like welcoming folks back after relapses, or and just really I just don't have any room. And I think it's one of the gifts of my story and my life is I just don't really have any judgment of people who, whatever happens. And so I tended to sponsor folks that have been in and out, or, in coming in and out of jail. Done a lot of work with people coming out of jail, in a lot of different ways. I find that my experience has enabled me to reach a hand out to people that some other people don't quite understand. So I've just used those negative experiences to like be better of service, and that's kind of step 12. And I think I'm sort of out of time. So thanks for asking me to share.
Good job.